Okay, swords. So the swords is associated with air, and this deck, or sorry, this suit is to be understood through the metaphor of air as thought. So if fire is belief, cups are emotion, swords are always the mental infrastructure we give to things in our life. So they can very much be read as ideas. The Ace of Sword represents a new idea, like something that you've been inspired by that just strikes you. It feels logical, it's clear, it's communication. It could also be a message. Somebody's handing you a message of something new, and that feels quite, you have this crown and the implication of wreaths around it. So there's something that you're winning from this kind of message. In the Two of Swords, we have a woman who's blindfolded in the same way, not in this deck, but in many representations of someone of justice. This character is making a decision and trying to weigh two options using their by quieting their mind, by not looking to other people, not listening to anyone else, trying to hear their deep self. You see the moon there. Hear what their conscious mind is saying to them. The Three of Swords, I have to say, is very often considered to be the breakup card. If you pull this, it could be indicative of the ending of a relationship. It's also it's the dealing of something quite painful. Threes are associated with a doubling of a communication. So it's a difficult conversation that ends up challenging your heart and quite often creating a sense of heartache. Following the Three of Swords, we have the Four of Swords, which represents a man in what looks like a church in meditation, praying. This is very much associated. So after you make a decision, you have a difficult conversation, you have a moment. The Four of Swords represent an interiority, a timeout, a break to recover and to maintain yourself again. Then we have the Five of Swords, which, as I mentioned, is similar to the Five of Wands, but in this case, you can see there's a winner and there's losers. There's ones who at the end of the fight have three swords and the others have none. This can be when someone's really slinging arrows and being quite cruel and difficult, and it's associated with really one-sided kind of conversations. Following that, we have the Six of Swords, which I always associate with a card of migration. It's also been considered a card of like refugees. It's the kind of traveling overseas, traveling over water that one wouldn't have chosen for themselves. They're actually leaving because they have no other option. So you have the Five of Swords where there's like there are these true battles, these true fights. And in the Six, it's like, okay, we're going to take what we got. We're going to take all these swords and we're going to get out of here. The Seven of Swords is considered to be someone who, like, these tents in the background are considered to be military camps. And instead of fighting as was done in the Five of Swords, the Seven of Swords is considered to be someone who is taking the swords and running away with them to prevent a fight. So in that sense, it's considered to be a way of outwitting your opponents. Like if you take away their ammunition, they can't fight you. So it's considered to be a way of outwitting your enemies, thinking logically about how to approach a situation and using your wits and your intelligence to win. The Eight of Swords is what I always refer affectionately as the fear prison. And I'm sure all of us have been there. It's living in the space of what if, it's living in the space of I can't do this, it's living in the space of what will happen if so-and-so does this, or what if, what if, what if. What we need to recognize about the Eight of Swords is that she is bound by, she has all these swords that could theoretically undo her bindings. But because she continues to be somewhat trapped in her own mental machination, she's unaware of the resources that are right there at her disposal. So we think, let's just say, there's a little bit of removed distance, because even though we can completely empathize with that perspective, we have to understand when we draw this card that we have the key out of our own mental difficulty, even if we don't recognize it at the time. The Nine of Swords, very kind of obvious imagery, is one of waking up in the middle of the night and having a nightmare and feeling totally distressed, like you can't do this, like you're really, this is actually not a card that I would say that you have much control over. The Eight of Swords, you have some control if you can challenge yourself. The Nine of Swords feels so much more like you're just responding to the anxiety that's present in your body. So what I would recommend if you were to encounter like a Nine of Swords moment is doing grounding exercises, taking a hot bath, running, walking, hanging out with a loved one, because that shit sucks. That's literally the worst. But last but not least, we have the Ten of Swords. And the Ten of Swords, again, we started the discussion of swords as a kind of idea. And the imagery of the Ten of Swords is the destruction of the body. And the way that I would kind of interpret this is to think of the body as an ego form, something that felt very real and very present and helped you operate in the world and get along and introduce yourself to people and navigate the world as a personality. But the Ten of Swords just represents the end of that ego, so as a kind of ego death. This could be a job, a relationship, a living situation, a kind of social status, something that felt very real. But again, I tend to think of this as more metaphorical. So it's like death, it's not a true death. It is the ending of your way of being in the world. But again, what's interesting is that you can see this interplay of like the black sky and like the yellow in between. So even though we have echoes of the background of the Nine of Swords, we also have this yellow, which has come up again and again as a kind of enlightenment, as a kind of optimism and possibility.